Hi, I'm Loren Schoenberg. I'm the Senior Scholar at the National Jazz Museum in Harlem, and we are thrilled to be here this afternoon as part of our Harlem Speaks on the Road series, which is sponsored by Humanities New York, and all of us at the National Jazz Museum in Harlem are very appreciative of this opportunity to do this very special and unique series, which is called Harlem Speaks on the Road. Harlem Speaks is our signature oral history project that we started, can you believe it, 20 years ago. And in fact, in the audience here today, we have actually one of our early subjects is here. We'll introduce him later. But nonetheless, this is a very special opportunity for me and for all of our watchers and listeners to learn about someone who has a reputation in the jazz world. I was going to say the jazz industry, but it's really more the jazz world, of being kind of a queen, someone who makes things happen, someone who created her own life. And it's a wonderful lesson for everyone. And today we're going to find out a lot of details about the wonderful Antoinette Montague, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
You know, I've been looking forward to this for so long because we bump into each other all the time. You're a mentor, you're a teacher to so many people, and you're involved in so many programs that are so important. But we're going to get into your life story and the past and how you wound up here. But you know, I think a great place to start is you are so busy and you make so many things happen here. We're recording this in January 2024. Could you bring our folks up to date on what you're doing right now? Which projects are most important for you right now?
I'm really impassioned about the culture and art of this country. And that is the foundation of the blues. Blues is the roots, everything else is the fruit. So from that foundation out of West Africa to this country, this great American country, is this art form that springs the jazz that we hear, the rhythm and blues that we hear, the pop music that we hear. And I am a legacy holder, proud. Very, very grateful to go into the audiences that I get an opportunity to perform. It's a privilege to be in front of people. It's a privilege to be here right now with everyone that's in the room, and especially you. You know, we've all made it through a pandemic. So right now, our desire of passing on information. I teach in several schools with several programs. One of the top schools is in my birth home, the great city of Newark, New Jersey. And I teach for the Newark School of the Arts. We've got Nadine Herman here with us today. We've got so many luminaries in the room. And right now, from Newark, but also Jazz Power Initiative, I teach with that program. They get the basic song ready, and then I come in and dig in deep for the performance levels. So they, you know, we utilize that. We teach them, give the children a technique, teach them how to breathe, how to use the different parts of the voice, head, chest, mix, and about the art of falsetto singing, and the absence thereof inside of our jazz and blues, and not relying on a lot of vibrato. So basic things to help them tweak and have a more authentic blues foundation inside of whatever they sing. And if they want to go into R&B, the R&B is more powerful because now you've got the beat, you got the blues, you got the real deal, and the art of being a griot, G-R-I-O-T, storyteller. That is our job, to tell stories that are meaningful, that have a victory story. I prefer blues of inspiration. So if it's something that makes celebration happen in the room, I'm your girl. So I enjoy being on the shoulders of Carrie Smith, who did Crazy Blues, one of the very first recordings. We've got Bessie Smith, who loved to dress, and you know, as we say in jazz, they see you before they hear you. So we live in a very casual world. So encouraging people to zhuzh it up a bit and make people smile. Have you ever watched the energy from somebody when you give them $1? They smile. Wow, why is this? Is this a currency that happens? And that's the same way with your presentation, your sound, your ability to tell a story. And I also teach for Jazzmobile on Saturdays at the Celia Cruz School of Performing Arts. There's a list of places and spaces that I'm in, and my main thing is just to be able to, I just want to sing at the highest level. I want to know about my craft. I want to be able to pass that along to not just young people, because we're so far away and removed from embracing this America's greatest treasure that, you know, folks in my generation and beyond need to hear the information, I feel. So.
Well, on top of all that, which is mostly educational, that's why I think of you as a griot, as someone who's just obsessed with passing this message and this art along. But you also work a lot, because I'm looking at the schedules of various places, and it just seems like I see Antoinette Montague, and I can't imagine how you do it on top of all those obligations that you just talked about. Could you talk about your professional life?
My professional life as a singer, I think there's something with the wiring of me that no matter how exhausted I might be, as soon as it is the day to get on stage with my band, the Antoinette Montague Experience, the real Antoinette Montague Experience. You hear more and more people use that word experience. That's what people want. They want to come out and feel something, because we're in this very jaded L7 kind of world. You know what L7 is? You put an L together and a 7 is square. There's a lot of cornball stuff happening in the world. And the one thing that still remains true is this beautiful improvisational art form that catches us in the moment. And no matter how tired I feel, I wake up in the morning and I have to calm myself down. I'm like, look, it's 7 a.m. Set doesn't start until 7. You got a long way to go. Get off the trampoline. I mean, I'm just excited emotionally. And that has kept me kind of fooled, even beyond certain illnesses that were life-threatening. I had no idea. I'd done 2 or 3 gigs, and I saw these little dots, and I was bleeding internally, and I was down to 10,000 platelets. Right? You need about 125 platelets to keep the blood inside of you, the walls of your artery. And I got fooled because I was so busy on the trampoline and the horsey and going and doing gigs and festivals until I could have blown it. You know, I could have blown it. So I'm grateful to be alive. Every day is a huge gift, and it's a super gift if you are able to live your dream about the matter of singing to other human beings on a stage and connecting with a room full of heartbeats, billions of heartbeats happening at the same time while I'm breathing, and showing the gratitude to my God and the universe for allowing me an opportunity to sing this blues and this jazz. It's a privilege, a high privilege. And many things are just starting to happen. I have had many young mentees that as soon as I could barely even have them on the bandstand with me for a little bit of time, showing them the craft, making them free up. Don't be so uptight. Do you really keep your arms that stiff when you walk? Show me how you walk. Now let's practice you coming into the room. Now we're gonna practice being on a bandstand. And I got the privilege of learning that craft from some of my mentors. Carrie Smith, one of the great legendary blues artists. She was in Black and Blue on Broadway. Etta Jones, you know, it's a privilege. We're gonna get there, okay? All right.
But before we talk about just real quickly, you use, like you mentioned, you've had so many wonderful young musicians play with you that have really kind of blown up. Mm-hmm. Who's in your band right now, Antoinette?
Right now, I've got Danny Mixon, who's a pianistic virtuoso. That's my musical partner. We work together. Melissa Slocum, who just got finished with Phantom of the Opera after 25 years, and that closed, and she was concerned about work. She's so busy, it's not even funny. It's just great. Drummers, Bobby Sanabria, and when it's not Bobby Sanabria, Bernard Harper, and when it's not him, it's, drummers are very quirky.
These are great veterans, great famous players you're using.
Yeah, it's a privilege to be able to, because I know they're going to give me what I need,
Right.
and all cracks will be sealed, and all energy and intention is right there inside of the music, and it's great to have veterans who know what the blues is, And then I bring a lot of young folks up, little Benny Saxable, who he relocated to Miami, but we're in touch almost on a weekly basis. And he's always trying to think of marketing things that jazz people can do to keep the music out there. And I'm very proud of him. He's done all kind of, what do you call those, cryptocurrencies with his cell phone, with a saxophone. And, I got another idea. I said, well, tell me about it. 7 o'clock in the morning, I'm talking to him. I've had from wonderful Emile Thurman, her first paid gig was with me. Wonderful Solomon Hicks, King Solomon Hicks. I met Solomon when he was 11 and taught him the blues first. And Jasmine Horn, so many other folks that I've come across and mentored, until when you are teaching somebody, you're reminding yourself of what to do. The more you give it away, the more you keep it.
All right, Antoinette, it's time to, this is your life.
He's looking at me.
No, so this is the Antoinette Montague that I know. This tremendous force field in our jazz world for quite a long time. But I'd like to go back and find out about where you're from and how did this happen. And if you don't mind, I'd like to ask you to introduce us to your parents.
So I am from what I call the great city of Newark, New Jersey. That's right. Newark is the bounce-back city of the state of New Jersey, and perhaps throughout this country, they that know the story of this great, great city and its can-do energy, and the great artists from Sarah Vaughan, James Moody, Melba Moore. There's a list. There's something about the spring drinking water. We used to have 5 breweries in the city of Newark. And so there's that.
Maybe their parents drank it.
I'm sure that they did. And to introduce you to my parents, James Montague Senior, who I'm going to dispense with worrying about the correct certain things that you need to call, but my dad was raised up when men were heavy-duty men. They took care of their families. Yeah, he hung out in bars every so often. He used to deliver a lot of things to bars and food places, etc. He was a truck driver, and then he went back to school when he was in his mid-50s to become what they call a fireman or the boiler man in some of these huge tenement houses. And so I'd go to work with my dad every so often, and we'd be way below the earth. And these huge, monstrous machines that were the heartbeat of the projects that he was keeping warm. And, we'd go to work, we'd go to breakfast, we'd go to sleep. I'm like, Dad, you can't take a nap on the job. He said, this is the time we're taking a nap on the job. And so he said, just put your head down on the desk. And when I wake up 15 minutes later, he'd have a little alarm set. And he'd get up and do all of his calibrations. Then he said, now we're going to take a walk, and we're going to check and see if there's any debris around the place. I said, but is that your job? He said, everything around here. Whether they pay me to do it, I make sure that it's done. No, they don't pay me extra, but I'm satisfied at the end of the day that the place is a quality of life that people should have. And so quality of life was his thing. He married my mom was Piccola Montague, Piccola Griffin, P-E-C-O-L-A. And she lost her mom when she was 7 years old. Her mother died in childbirth. And it was, my heart really had great empathy for my mother, losing her mother that young, and having to see my grandmother in a casket with the baby in her arms. So every day there was a line of people because it was almost like a sideshow attraction of sorts. But at night she would just beg her mother to come back and beg her mother to come back, please, I'll be good, And so my heart really went from, I would ask her all kinds of, so how did that feel, and did you ever stop crying? She said, do I cry every day now? No. Time happens to heal all wounds of the heart. Even if you nick yourself, give it time, take care of yourself and it will come back. My mother was one of the first black classes in Arts High School. My mother's singing, as far as I'm concerned, was better. It was almost like Sarah and Ella with a dash of Mahalia Jackson. Wow. Tremendous singer. Got pregnant early for my dad. He went back south and was waking up every morning, and he had morning sickness. And his father said, I think you got some gal pregnant up there in the north. He said, no. So he called my mother and said, Pete. They called my mom Pete because she was quite a boxer. Pete, are you pregnant? Yeah. Why didn't you tell me? I don't want you to be mad at me. He said, we got to get married. I'll be up next week. Get a dress. And they got a dress, and 8 children later, I'm the last of 8 children.
8 children.
8 children. But she was such an amazing singer. And my brother-in-law told a story. They went to a church that my mother was a part of. They had some sort of church anniversary. He said, and we're sitting there, and the music is beginning, and I hear this voice, oh, we're marching up to Zion. We're marching up to Zion. We're marching up to Zion, that city of gold. He said, but this voice came through, and I'm like, in church, I said, who the heck is that singing? And then I turned around and I saw it was your mother leading the procession with the choir. And I turned to your sister and said, is that Mama? She said, yeah. Singing like that? She said, yeah. And y'all make her cook for you? So there was I sat on the floor many a day listening to my mother cook, clean, wash dishes, entertain me, do the huck-a-buck, move the kitchen table out of the way and teach me how to fight. It's like, I don't want to fight with you. She said, you got to learn. You cannot come home beat up one more day. If you come home beat up one more day, I'm going to beat you up. And I'm like, this is not where I want to be. Let me just work on this. So she was a powerhouse. She had to be. She got moved from one relative to another relative to another relative. Now, my father, when he decided he was going to come and marry my mother, he did not expect that in the middle of the night there would be some men pulling up to his house, bringing him out of his bed in the middle of the night with his father and mother present, telling him, you're not going anywhere. Right. Well, he was born in 1913 in Zebulon, North Carolina, Zebulon, 15 minutes outside of Raleigh. And that still was great slavery going on. We do not realize how long the effects of slavery happen to be. Sharecropping is one thing, but when you're told you're not leaving this space until we figure out who's going to pick Jimmy's share, and his brothers all agreed, but my father had to return home a couple of times during the year, bringing canned goods, food, money, etc., trying to still, he had a responsibility. And he kept that responsibility towards his siblings and their children, pretty much all of the life that he had before he went into dementia. Oh, wow. And so here, I used to ask my dad, I said, you never told me about how you grew up. I said, that was like slavery. He said, it wasn't like slavery, it was slavery. He said, my mother would be, she's had all these children, 14, 15 kids, and she's still out picking cotton, still out picking cucumbers, still pick at tobacco. And every so often, the overseer would be on the horse, and cracked the whip at my mother. Pick faster than that, Susie. You can move faster than that. He said, and I would look at him and say, boss, you want some water? He said, yeah, Jimmy. He said, I'd take the bucket and go down to the creek. And everybody knew, if I came back with the ladle in one hand and the bucket in another one, don't drink the water today, because I gave him something special in it. So I said, well, wow, you know. So I respect the shoulders of my parents. They were the most generous people. I know the generosity of myself among family members who witnessed it came from them. No matter how little they perceived they had, I always thought they were rich. Wow. It blew my mind how much food would go out of the house. You know, clothing, you name it. He was a truck driver. Things fell off the truck. I had a pair of one pink and one green corduroy pants from some skating team. I stayed in that for 3 years until I just said, I am not wearing pink and green corduroy outside anymore, okay? So I'm just very fortunate to come from the legacy of great, great parents who literally gave everything they could. Family was sacred to my mother. It's sacred to me. The funny thing after parents pass is the children have to remember, you decide what kind of siblings you'll be in absentia of your parents. And it's a choice. So I look at my jazz family as siblings. I look at my jazz family as my family, no matter how competitive things get. And it's silly that it's 5 beans on the table, 8 people wanting to eat, and so we scrap it out over it. But at the end of the day, is to keep the culture alive. I want to make sure that we are on the scene 10, 20, 30 years from now as the people who built and created the culture.
So how did professional singing start to come into your life? What's the path that happened when you got out of school? Where did you go? What happened when you left home?
My desire to be a singer really probably almost from the womb. And so by the time I was 5 years old, I was always in the living room entertaining the family, telling jokes. I thought some of the stuff was funny. Some people didn't think it was quite. But when I saw James Brown, Ella Fitzgerald, Louis Armstrong on the Ed Sullivan Show, I knew what I wanted. When I saw Mahalia Jackson on television singing at the March on Washington, it opened up my soul. And my mother and I we looked at each other when she was finished. And I could see the tears in my mother's eyes. I felt like I wanted to cry because it was just incredible. So I would give shows in the back hallway at the age of 7 or 8 years old. Got 2 cookies and some pear juice. And that was 10 cents. And I would be Michael Jackson. I would be Diana Ross. I'd be any of those people. And then when I saw Lady Sings the Blues and went to the Newark Public Library, they didn't have the album with Diana Ross on it, but the woman was sophisticated enough to bring me Billie Holiday. She said, here's the real Billie Holiday. So I listened and listened and listened. And so she said, well, what do you think? I said, it sounds like she's crying. She said, and she is. She's singing the blues. She's singing from the heart. I said, it's making me feel sad. I think there's one slow song that I like, Fine and Mellow. So I started singing Fine and Mellow. And my mother was like, you better be careful singing that music. You know, Billie Holiday had a problem with drugs. And I'm like, do you think I'm going to do drugs? She said, I don't know. I'm just telling you everything about that life of being a professional singer. You're out in the world, you're on your own. So, and then I went to high school, you do little choirs. And when I went to Seton Hall University, they had a gospel choir. Now my family, being Jehovah's Witnesses, did not sing gospel music. But I adored James Cleveland, Mighty Clouds of Joy, you know, all of the greats of gospel, all of the greats of blues. It's in you. it's in you like a horn player, reverberates with Bird. You know, we just had the J.J. Johnson Centennial with Band of Bones from Dave Chamberlain. You know, those people revere him. The trombone players. You know, so I revere the singers. I'm grateful to have hearing. You know, I'm grateful to be able to have a brain that sees the beautiful outfits that the women folk would wear. And, you know, I'm just grateful to be alive.
Was the Adams Theater still going around in Newark? So what's some of the first, of all these great folks, you mentioned records and movies and stuff, that you actually heard in person, that you actually sat and heard something that just shook your world?
Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin were at the Adams Theater at the end of a Tom and Jerry cartoon. You know, there was some movie, I'm sure, but who cares about a movie when you're like 5 or 6 years old? And at the end, the curtain popped open, and here comes Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin. And I probably annoyed everybody in my section screaming and saying, "It's really them, it's really, do you see it's them?" And like, so I appreciated live performance. I respected that they were on the television and now they're in person. I'd like to be on the television and then in person. Let's see who else I saw there. That's all I remember right now off the top of my head.
Oh, that's interesting. Mm-hmm. So you mentioned Seton Hall. Tell us that story. What, how, why, how long, what did you study, how did it happen?
Well, I decided I wanted to be an attorney, and I was in a great program in high school called the Upward Bound Program. If it were not for the Upward Bound Program, you would probably not see me here. It gave me, my mother was like, "You're not going to these regular high schools, you're gonna go to a VOTEC school, girls vocational in Newark. Learn how to be a secretary like your sister." I'm like, I can't even find my socks. I don't want to do that, but guess what? She said, "I'm not going to live long, and you're going to need to feed yourself." And I said, "Well, the rest of them around here help feed me." She said, "You're going to need to learn to feed yourself. That's the world that we live in. The world is getting more and more selfish. You better take care of yourself." So I learned to take dictation and type, and had a little job, work study from sophomore, junior, senior year. And then I went to Seton Hall's Upward Bound program because, you know, the VOTEC schools at the time didn't really give you the tools you needed to get into college. So by my third year of Upward Bound, I had 9 college credits. When I got out of high school, I was already accepted into Seton Hall University. And I did what I was supposed to. My junior year, my mother died of brain cancer. And I could not, it was almost like somebody just poured some olive oil on my brain because what used to stick was not sticking. And I had, the first year I paid for myself, and then the second year I had the great full scholarship called the Martin Luther King Scholarship. They select 10 students. It's not needs-based, but it is an academic and a community-based program. So sophomore, junior, and going into the senior year, I just realized that I was not honoring what I needed to honor. I really needed some counseling and did not know how to ask for help. I really needed some support from the school. And, you know, so I came out and started working and got involved with a little R&B band and, you know, a little singing here and there. I didn't know how to have a career, but I was always singing in some choir, always singing at somebody's party. People started calling and saying, "I'm having a gathering, why don't you come and sing?" And I'm like, great. The idea of paying me was frontal lobe as well, because I thought I need to make some money, and here's a way that I can do that. I didn't call it a side hustle. I just called it a gradual baptism of what my soul wanted to be while I'm here in this flesh. And then I ended up getting doing some typesetting, computerized typesetting while I was trying to sing. and then went to a company that was on 42nd Street, Bottom Line Personal Boardroom Reports. It was a publishing company. And then I became a human resources person, and then a vice president of human resources, with a boss who was kind of pissed off with the fact that, yeah, I'm out singing tonight. You're not thinking about the business. No, not right now. You never lied. It's Friday night at 11:30, Marty. What is it that you want? I want your soul. But I really appreciated being able to pay my bills, live, drive, and enjoy life. But I stopped singing for about 10 years because he insisted that I focus on that. And I said, okay, this is the best thing I got going now, you know. And then one day, I saw that Carrie Smith was going to be at a place called Trumpets in Montclair, New Jersey, which no longer exists, but I started asking her to teach me the blues. And she said, I'm no singing teacher, and I'd probably end up killing your spirit, but you can come and learn whatever you think you can learn from me. And I stayed with Carrie until she died, and that was about 14 years. And I learned how to get on stage, how to get off. She let me look at her contracts. You know, I made calls, I did bookings, I did a sundry of things that a manager does. You know, even help make sure that we took care of some rent and some other things. And then I'm like, you were married to a Mason. Why are you living, you know? And she's like, well, what else can I do? Go in and get his share, he's dead. She, oh, it's impossible. Man, she came back from the Social Security office. It was almost like she had hit the lottery. She said, you come down here, I'm gonna fry you and your husband some fish. I got you an outfit. She said, I had no idea that that was possible. And it made life easier for her. So bit by bit, she would tell people, yeah, Antoinette, or my family name is Annie. Annie, help me out with this. Adele needs you to listen to her problem because she's trying to figure out. And so the same human resource energy that I had for the place that I worked that was paying my livelihood was what I've given to our jazz community when it's possible. And then I've learned some people, you can give them information. You can try to be helpful. It's up to them to receive it.
You can take a horse to water, but you can't make them swim.
Yeah, you really can't. Even if you throw the water on them, it's not going to help them swim.
I'd like to pause there for a moment because I also worked with Carrie a lot. We did some stuff with...
How well I remember.
We did stuff, and I knew her very well.
92nd Street Y, I think you were. And then
Yeah.
were you with Carnegie Hall with the John Faddis's?
I was in many places with her.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it was Carnegie Hall. But the reason that I mention it is, you see, now what you just told me, she was such a huge presence on stage and the ultimate in confidence and everything. And yet you find out that someone can be one way in their art and their stuff, but when it comes to their finances or to their personal life, maybe they just don't have that skill set.
Right.
And so I'd like to just take a pause here for a moment, and could you give us, and I just have to say, I feel like we hit pure gold here because this is one of the best interviews I've ever done. I don't have to say anything. This is such, no, but I mean it, this is such a wonderful narrative, and this is what makes our Harlem Speaks series gold. It really is, because this is not just for today. Well, it's not just for today. This is for posterity. This goes in our archives. This will be seen by a lot of people. And I have to apologize just real quickly to folks looking in the future. Why is he dressed like this? Well, actually, I can tell you, and I'm not going to say that I thought that my sport jacket was in my office, and it's not. I would not come with rolled up sleeves to do an interview. So I apologize for that to the folks out there in the future. It's also 100 degrees in here, but seriously. But
I love senior citizens because of that. Nice and toasty.
Okay, no, it's nice. But anyway, I apologize for that. Now, getting back to the interview. Carrie Smith. let's take advantage of this moment, this interview, for you to give us a portrait of that woman, because she's not been documented enough. She worked with Dick Hyman for a while. She did a whole bunch of stuff. But tell us about Carrie Smith, please.
From Fort Gaines, Georgia, Carrie Smith comes from a legacy of great baritone and contralto singers. The mother was an amazing singer. The father was like Paul Robeson. His voice was just this great, amazing, powerful voice. She too suffered the absentia of a mother. 2 sisters married 2 brothers. The brothers were abusive to the 2 sisters. The 2 sisters decided, tonight we make the dash, we run and don't look back. But they left Carrie. They left Carrie, and the mother's mother initially took care of her, and then, the father, who was abusive and now had a new girlfriend, and as the women were cleaning out the cemetery in the neighborhood, the father rode up on his horse and asked his girlfriend, where you been the last 2 days? And she said something flippant back, and he took out a gun and killed her. Oh my God. Right? So then there's Carrie, no mother that's on the scene, father that's going to jail for the rest of his life, and the grandmother who really was not capable of giving to Carrie. So the father stayed in prison for many, many years. And then one night, there was an electrical storm the day he was to be electrocuted. Blew out the circuitry of the building. He didn't get the chair that day. And then 6 months later, when it was time to do it again, he had been preaching to the warden's wife and talking about redemption and forgiveness. And that got to the warden's wife, who then begged to have his life spared, and that he could be a helpful person to the other men that were in prison with correcting and turning their lives around. So Carrie Smith, living with the grandmother, there was an uncle who would come by and play the piano, and they'd sing, "Back, back train, get your heavy load, back, back train, get your heavy load." She's a little girl singing this. And the grandmother decided she's going to locate Carrie's mother. So they get on the train, they come north. The mother was involved with Father Divine's organization.
Right up here in Harlem.
Right in Harlem, but there's also a great Riviera hotel that was in Newark, New Jersey, and people lived there at the Riviera, and they went out and did a day's work throughout the community to sustain the organization. Many people don't know, before Martin Luther King, there was Father Divine with his amazing marching band and devotees, and they would march and protest in the streets. They didn't call it protesting, but they were just trying to save souls. But so the grandmother came and found that Carrie's mother was living in Father Divine's place, and she got in with Carrie, and as Carrie said, my mother was coming down the stairs, and her mother said, "Hi," and she said, "Hello." She said, "How are you?" And Carrie's mother said, "Who are you?" She said, "I'm your mother." She said, "I no longer have a mother." Right? Because you give up your family, you give up. She said, "Not only am I your mother, this is your child." She said, "And I don't have a child." She said, "Yes, you do, and you're going to take care of her." And she pushed Carrie towards the mother. So the mother, that organization had a place in New Paltz. Father Divine's wife, who, the dinner table was set up black, white, black, white, black, white. He was integrating and showing that it could be done. And her mother was one of the score writers for the big band that Father Divine had. Jesus. Yeah, so she got it honest inside of musicianship. But they sent all the children to New Paltz, and they were raised and taught during school And that's where Carrie got the love of being on the stage. Father Divine's wife would dress her up like in a little kimono-looking something or other, and put a little parasol in her hand, and she would sing a song, parasols and fans, you will see such lovely things in far-off Japan. And there's Carrie at the age of 7 years old, being on stage, having a little costume on, and she was loved. They loved her, she loved them, and then, you know, the holidays come. And so families wanting to seek Carrie out would come to find her and say, you know, well, we just want her to spend, you know, a little Christmas with us. And they let her go. When she came back, they were like, no more in the future. You can't go out there with the world. You have to be here with us. Well, the family came around Easter and said, we want to take her to the house and let her enjoy Easter. And the mother said, if you take her, you can never return her to Father's divine care. They thought that that was a joke. So they took her for the weekend, and when they brought her back, place was on lockdown, and Carrie said, I looked up at the window and I saw my mother peeking from the curtain. And then she looked at me and scowled and then threw the curtain back. She said, I knew I wasn't going to see my mother anymore in life. Yeah. So she was really brought back to the family who had taken her away for the holiday weekend. And immediately they put an apron on Carrie, put a broom in her hand, and said, you have to earn your keep. And Carrie did that until she was about 19 years old, when Dick Hyman took her to, I believe they went to Paris, to one of these Grand Parade events. In Nice, yeah. And
wow, that's great.
Yeah, and she came, before she left, she decided that she was going to try to find a room of her own. And her aunt had been telling her how impossible it is to live on your own. And she said, well, so she came back home and opened the door to her own room. She said, the same little juice I left in the refrigerator before I left was there. I had some food in the freezer. She said, and I sat down and said, this ain't so hard, you know? And she always kept a place of her own, no matter how much time she spent out of the country. A lot of Carrie's career was spent traveling.
No, I have to tell you, you know, there's one part of your generous spirit and your mentorship. Most people I interview, when you ask them about someone else, they really don't want to talk about anyone else. They just want to talk about themselves. And this story that you just told us about Carrie Smith, now we have some documentation about a great singer who's not here to tell her story anymore. I want to thank you so much. I didn't mean to cut you off because I could listen forever about that.
No.
But we only have about 10 more minutes.
Okay.
And I guess I'd just like to find out, you mentioned Carrie. Who else would be your main mentors?
Etta Jones, who got a posthumous Grammy for Don't Go to Strangers.
Sure, of course.
Norman Simmons, who was one of the great accompanists for Joe Williams for 20 years, Anita O'Day for 10 years, Carmen McRae, a number of people that he was the guy for. So to learn phrasing from Norman, he couldn't really teach singers about technique, but what he was a phrasing guru out of his existence from Chicago. He worked with Vernell Fournier on his first recording, and then had a scratch on the recording. The label wouldn't reprint it, and next Fournier was with who? Ahmad Jamal, doing those same percussive things that they use for Poinciana. If you listen to Norman Simmons' first recording, that was years before,
really? You
will hear Vernell's drumming and beautiful, artistic stuff. But my first recording is Pretty Blues, which was a song that Norman and Joe Williams sort of accidentally wrote as an original. And I had the privilege of Mulgrew Miller being on my first 2 recordings, along with the trio was Mulgrew Miller, Peter Washington, Kenny Washington, Bill Easley.
couldn't get anybody good.
Nope. And
That's
listen,
the A-team of the A-team.
literally, I got in a recording studio and shook. Because here's this dream, and here you are. And then the next one was Behind the Smile, which I wrote the title song for. And that was with the same group. Why did I use the same group? To shut everybody up about, well, they wouldn't do it with you twice. Yes, they did. Now what? You had problems? No, you didn't. And then I did, in 2015, World Peace in the Key of Jazz. And that civil rights music is where I love and live, but I knew our young had to hear it. My age had to be reminded of it, and we had to honor the Elder Statespersons for doing that. And right now, I'm on something called Vox Humana with Bobby Sanabria's Multiverse Band, and he is up for a Grammy, and when you are the feature on a recording, that means you're in the lottery game too. So on the 3rd or 4th of February is the Grammys, absolutely. I'm still trying to find a ticket to go. If you know anybody, let me know. But they changed the rules. You know, those tickets are like $1,000 plus you got to pay airfare and hotel. So I got a short window to keep trying to nudge and figure my way. But I'm very, very clear that there is nothing better than this art form, than the people who come out and sit in a chair and listen to our stories, our songs. So I'm thanking everyone in the room right now for being here today. I'm especially thanking the Jazz Museum in Harlem. As a matter of fact, I have my, and I just don't have it on for today, but this is my...
Oh, a National Jazz Museum in Harlem bracelet.
There we go.
Hey,
there we go.
Okay.
And I wear it most days, all year long, to let people know of the different places and spaces that believe in this great American cultural art form called blues and jazz, that they've dedicated their lives to it. And it's a privilege to just even be called a blues or jazz artist. I'm very grateful. I've had to work at singing. It's a different ball game when you're talking about singing this music. You know, there's a protocol. You got to learn melody. You got to sit down at a piano and get some ear training. I've come at it at a time that is priceless in this country because now we can help. I was one of the first people to put music on Zoom. That's right. And Brother Rome Neal is here. He is aware. We also have our wonderful family from the Duke Ellington Society.
Yes, I'd like to recognize Marlene Carmen, who's been with us for so long, and you mentioned Rome Neal, who's a giant in the field, and who was one of our very first Harlem Speaks interviewees a couple of decades ago. Rome, thank you for coming, and everyone here, our friends that we haven't met yet.
Right.
I'll put it this way. I don't know what to say, except they could have your picture in the dictionary next to the word that you mentioned, griot, in terms of sharing these stories. And all I can say is, every story you told made me think of 10 more questions I wanted to ask you. Because you're like a crossword puzzle. It's like each thing links like this. So all I can do is thank you and ask the audience if anyone has any questions or statements for Ms. Montague.
Yeah, I just go back to the internet. Your impacts. Talk about your impact on during the pandemic.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
With the music.
Yeah, we literally.
I'm just going to repeat his question in case the folks couldn't hear it. Mr. Neal asked Annette to talk about her impact during the pandemic and what you did at that time to kind of keep the community together. Is that fair, Rome?
That's it.
Okay.
Well, one of the best students of I had to pull several musicians by the ear because they were just so bummed out about, everything had stopped. Yep. But that December, I lost my brother, December the 4th, and it was 2019, and they didn't know the word COVID. I remembered seeing in October, something came out of Italy saying, America, shut everything down. Don't be arrogant. You'll regret it. And then my brother died, didn't know what that was. You know, he had excess of 106 degrees, and it must have something called fever rash. So he's my complexion, but his skin was burnt like cooked charcoal broiled meat. Yeah, it was amazing. And then I was teaching at Marymount. Marymount shut down about the third week of January, and they started Zoom online. And I had 12 students that were jazz students, and they were bummed because, you know, I had to leave my apartment. My parents made me get out. Okay. Well, listen, you're stuck. I'm going to give you all 5 minutes. 5 minutes to create something, a song, a picture, etc. I'm going to make me a tuna sandwich. I'll be right back. And when I came back, the amazing things they created in 5 minutes blew their minds, but I didn't realize how many parents were sitting out of my sight listening to see if they were going to pay that tuition because the school had shut down. And I heard from 4 different parents right then and there saying, this has been wonderful. We have not been able to get any creative energy, and so I'm going to let them finish out the semester. And then I was doing a program, Music on the Inside in the Prisons, with Lena Bloomgarden. And I told her, listen, I got lupus. I'm not coming back into the prison system while this is happening. Oh, no, well, let's figure out something. I said, the figure out is, why don't we do a program on Zoom? Get some of our friends, and let's let jazz be the service, the support, the energy. Let's do a public service and raise this thing called jazz and not be so selfish, because people need this. And it grew. We had about maybe 125 people at a max, but 5 to 7 artists on a weekly Sunday basis. Sure. And then I would harass Danny, and I really kept harassing Rome for like a couple of months, and they're like, I don't want to do anything. I said, Rome, if you go online, you'll be bigger than bubblegum, because you're gonna make sure that you take care of what you need to have in place. And while he didn't use Zoom, he did use another platform, and he's done some incredible shows with Dee Dee Bridgewater, who was honored, myself, Sheila, etc. So I talked to Jazzmobile, I talked to Eli, I talked to International Women in Jazz, which is dear to my heart as well. Doesn't get nearly the support that it needs, but they need some support, and there we go.
Please join me in thanking Antoinette Montague for this wonderful work.